Everybody in Lancashire loves Glasson. I'm not sure why exactly. There's nothing of any architectural or historical significance here, just a lot of masts, a smokehouse selling Morecambe Bay potted shrimps, a small Victorian church, a pub, a butty van sometimes, a few cranes constructed from Meccano, and the last vestiges of a sunken boat. Nonetheless, over the summer months, Glasson grows fat, with equally turgid middle-aged bikers of the motorcycles and leathers variety, all sporting bird's nest beards and space hoppers stuffed up their t-shirts, and excitable dog walkers and picnicking parents with butterfly tattoos and radish-headed kids. The public toilets, believed to be the only ones left operating in Lancashire these days, are probably the main draw. Glasson primarily is of course a dock, albeit a very small one. Believe it or not, it still handles over 500,000 tonnes of cargo every year. Apparently, it was purpose-built by the Georgians because navigation up the River Lune into Lancaster was becoming increasingly congested, and, well, it seemed like a good idea at the time. Following various not-worth-mentioning delays, the dock was finally completed in 1787, with the capacity to hold up to 25 merchant ships. Sorry, there are going to be quite a few instantly forgettable facts in this episode. It's also the fulcrum that connects its own personal branch of the Lancaster Canal, added in 1825 at an estimated cost of £34,608 for the anally retentive, to the River Lune via its lock. There are a further 6 more conventional narrow boat-sized locks along the branch itself, which have a tendency to dry up whenever the sun comes out for more than 35 minutes. The Canals and Rivers Trust always blame the lack of water on grockles leaving these sluices open. But the truth is, the Canals and Rivers Trust are just bloody useless. If you're a boater, it's probably best to avoid the Glasson branch altogether. We always did. Besides the world-famous lock, there's an old bit to Glasson, known, unsurprisingly, as Old Glasson, which the history books inform us is, or rather was, an agricultural community. Communities probably stretching it a bit far. As far as we can make out, it's just one farmhouse. According to Victorian maps, there's a holy well here, however. On the off chance you don't know, holy wells are generally reappropriative, prehistoric votive shrines, if that helps. Or, at least, again, there was. There's just a hedge and a grass verge nowadays. A few yards further up the lane lurks this peculiar water feature, clogged with plants but definitely old and damp. Whether the Ordnance Survey stuck the holy well in the wrong place on the map or not, we couldn't honestly say. Then again, we might just not have looked hard enough. Whatever the case, it stands, or possibly stood, on Dobbs Lane. There's etymology in a name like that. Dobbs and Dobbies were the descendants of ancient druids, a sort of halfway house for the medieval witches and warlocks. Dobbies generally dressed in long shaggy coats made from Loughton wool. They kept albino hares for their familiars and performed ancient healing spells and mystical magical rites. We don't half know some rubbish, don't we? Whatever the case, Dobbs Lane is clearly an ancient holloway, its banks now shored up with large cobblestones. There'll be long-forgotten history and folklore buried beneath that tarmac, you can bet. Right, it's not-so-fun facts and figures time. The Customs House at Glasson was built in 1834, a watch house in 1836, and a dry dock in 1841. The church, aka the not particularly inventively named Christ Church just up the canal, was built from sandstone rubble and slate in 1840, when society still gave a damn about religious matters. It's a really pleasant little church inside, but whether down to COVID or the fact that the vicar just couldn't be arsed getting out of bed, it was closed the day we visited. Did I mention that Glasson had a pub? Of course it does. That wasn't closed the day we visited. The Dalton Arms is another Georgian building, but nobody seems to know anything about or even care about its history. It's dog-friendly, apparently. There's also a lighthouse by the lock gates built in 1787, or possibly 1836. Our researchers have thrown up various suggestions. Constructed from something known as slobbered sandstone. An oddly disturbing, dinky sort of building with a chimney pot. It resembles a Wendy house designed by Tim Burton. It isn't there to ward ships off the rocks, however. It's a navigational aid. Glasson Dock is only accessible from the Lune at high tide, and only then for 45 minutes. Back in the day, there was a large boat called the Baba-G, or something equally as juvenile and unsuitable for a working dockyard. It served as a cafe, moored against the quayside. As a kid, I was enthralled by the ducks bobbing about outside the porthole, while I was tucking into my knickerbocker glory. Don't start. Ducks are remarkably similar to Glasson in many respects. There's nothing special about them, they grow boring incredibly quickly, but we still take photographs of them whenever we see them, despite the huge collection already clogging up our hard drives. There was a railway connecting Glasson to Lancaster once, but that's gone now. These days, what's left of it is a cycle path instead. Presumably, judging by the name of Tithe Barn Street, Glasson had a tithe barn once as well. As you've probably gathered, we've run out of stuff to tell you, so like button, subscribe bell, Lancashire Footnotes, etc. Same time next week.